and they were newlyweds. And I did have a wonderful plan for their lives. I did hear that he was a builder, but more than that, the needs of the migrant workers in the camps that were all around us. There were thousands, 50,000 from southern Mexico that had come into the Baja Peninsula as migrant workers. And there was absolutely no medical care for these people, 50,000 without, and they would change them from camp to camp, and so that they could not get any application or get into the health department for care. And that we had a young girl that we had sent to training in Ensenada and then San Quintin named Duran. And she was a nurse, and she came back, and Peter and Debbie sponsored our very first nurse that, and Rod and Faith Southard's parents also supported this girl. I'm just home from Canada, where I went to cut the ribbon at a church in Quebec, in a little place called Assumption, where a medical doctor and his wife had their lives transformed when they came to the mission, and now they're up and they've got a congregation in very hard ground. And I look back as when I was up with Luke, Dr. Luke Chassé, and many of you knew Dr. Luke and his wife Lise, and I look back and trying to think when it all began. And I thought, you know, it all began with Debbie and Peter sponsoring a nurse, and that medical center was born that would treat thousands and thousands of people, where the same medical center that is going to be coming this month, a group of 30 doctors come, who one of them is a plastic surgery, who will do the work on this little girl. And so it's, you know, one makes a difference. One makes a difference. The medical center was born through Debbie and Peter being key, because they had the faith and willingness to support. As most of you know, this started with a little prayer group that has been meeting in our home now for 53 years. We've only missed one Friday in 53 years. A little gathering of people that had a passion for missions. We were all Lutherans at the time, and it was kind of a rare thing in our particular persuasion. And but this, all of us had been impacted. Most of us had gone to Lutheran Bible Institute when we were young people, and we had this passion of we really thought we could reach our world for Christ. And anyway, and I was thinking about that, and it started with a prayer group. And we, through the years, this last Friday night, many of you are here tonight because we prayed for you and prayed that you would come. Prayer has been the foundation for this ministry from the very beginning. And it was the prayer group that ended up being the board of the foundation for his ministry, and bought the property, and then at a certain 1973, there were 70 people on our mailing list, and we were meeting, and we recognized that God was doing miracles in our midst. We saw our food multiplied. We saw blankets multiplied. We saw God just do miraculous things that were happening. And we had one man on our board, a guy named Dave Taylor, and he said, this has got to get out. People have got to know that God is still working miracles. Miracles do help. And he said, we've got to get the news out. And so he in turn made a call to Jan and Carl Holter. Put your hands up. Made a call, and they were a young married couple living in Cedar Rapids, Illinois. And no, not Illinois, Iowa, Cedar Rapids, sorry about that, Iowa, wrong state. Yeah, Cedar Rapids, and he called them and he said, you know, we think that Charla should be traveling and telling these stories about what God was doing. And so somehow Jan Holter and Carl said, well, you know, maybe we could invite her back to our church and maybe to the church where Jan had come from down in Morris, Illinois. Well, anyway, this came back and Dave came and he said, the Holters are willing to put together an itinerary for you. And a lot of people don't know, I am painfully shy. I walk into a room full of people and I'm painfully shy. I don't meet people well, and possibly it's because I can hardly read. I'm born with extreme dyslexia and dysgraphia. And growing up, it was a tremendous disability. And so that's part of the reason I was shy. Well, anyway, on a Friday night, we were gathered in a room, and there was about 25 of us, including Dave and Audrey Taylor, and they said, you know, they looked around the room, and we were the ones who our kids had just kind of let the empty nest syndrome. Our kids had gone off to home, and they thought that I should be traveling and telling these stories. And I thought, I'm the last person in the world. You know, I can't read, I can't do this, I can't do that. I die when I have to speak to people, but somehow I was unanimously chosen to go. And we set out for a church in Morris, Illinois. At that time, Morris was a small town. Jan Holter is where she grew up at church. And there's a pastor here, Steve Wojta is here. And anyway, they sent me first to Cedar Rapids and then to Morris, and then a whole bunch of little tiny country churches out in the bean and cornfields of around Morris. And I somehow I was able to get through all of this, and those people began to support us. They're still faithfully supporting us. A little group of people around Morris, Illinois, hardly on the map, little country churches. And came back from that trip, and a pastor invited me to go up to Canada and to Vancouver Island to share a testimony there. And I spoke at this Trinity Church in downtown Vancouver, and afterwards, following us, somebody invited us out to high tea from this church, and it was a Colonel Riddell, and he said, "You've got an amazing message about the faithfulness of God." And I'm going to call a pastor in Calgary, Alberta, and he said, "I think you need to go over to Calgary. Are you willing to go to Calgary, Alberta?" And I said, "I guess I'm willing to go to Calgary, Alberta." Anyway, unfortunately, he was on the phone, and he was in the same room, and he called this pastor of the Emmanuel and Assembly of God in Calgary, Alberta, and he said, "I've got this Lutheran lady here, and I think she's got something to say." And he went on talking, and I could hear on the other end, John Lucas saying, "Why would I be interested in a Lutheran lady?" And he says, "This one's unique. This one is unique." And so he said, "Well, I'll call you back." And 20 minutes later, John Lucas in Calgary, from Calgary, said, "Send her over." And anyway, I flew to Calgary and spoke at a church that was in the midst of a great revival up at the Great Stampede in Calgary. And the little church in Morris opened the doors to Illinois and Wisconsin. And when I think about it, and then there's another guy, Rod Southard. Raise your hand, Rod. Dad came to California, and I got to meet he and his wife, and I would come back here, and Rod Southard's father drove me all over to Wisconsin, to these little churches out in the boonies. Probably they're the only person that would have listened to me because they didn't have many visiting ministers. And I think about the places I've been, little tiny country churches where they love God. And then through Calgary,